This is Nick Williams, and I'm here with Lorne Peterson.
Yeah, I was a chief model maker and supervisor.
Yeah. So first off, you helped create this entire universe.
We did.
I
did.
So, what was the experience like building kind of from scratch?
Well, it is really a fun process, because I must have shown some skill at it right from the very beginning, because I was chosen. The boss said, you do this, you do that, and so I got to do engines and the kind of the real special areas on the ships, and it was like doing a mandala. You could go up to all the toy kits, and you'd get 2 of this part, 4 of that one, 6 of this, 12 of that. You would never get 1, 5, or 7 of anything unless you wanted one in the middle. But you'd have an idea what you're going to do. You snap all these parts off and lay them out, and then apply them, in layers and all that stuff. So it just worked out that I was real good at that kind of thing. I call it making like a mandala.
Yeah.
And but I never had a day that I didn't want to eagerly go to work in 35 years or so. It was just every day was a different adventure. I used to tell employees, other model makers, if they're doing something that's really kind of boring for you, just wait a week and you're going to be doing something else, because it's an experience that not every model maker was born to, and that is that there were some people that I hired that didn't work out so good, and they wanted to stick with their model at their desk, and I had to make people jump, from one thing to another. You'd work on one thing for a week and it'd say, I need to have this person and that person work on it, and I need you over here. And so almost every single one of them got used to that. Some people didn't. One person didn't really, and had a hard time doing that.
Yeah.
Really going.
I see so many pictures here on the table of things that you created. Was there any particular model that you worked on or created that you're particularly proud of, or really still love?
Yeah, I'm particularly proud of every single one of them, but I don't see it here at the moment. But what happened was, as we grew, I started out with 6 model makers, but eventually there were about 200 model makers by the time we did Sith. And but in Empire, I was having to hit the top of the wave so much I wasn't getting to spend the time on a model like I did on Star Wars. So when the Slave 1 came along, I was like, okay, I really love that design. I was going to spend some time on that model. So I'd put more of my input into that and not just hit the top of the waves. And so I was just really satisfied with that particular model. But it was really all of them. It's just sometimes a model that solved a really difficult problem is a favorite. It wasn't a Star Wars model, but this model had to operate and do things for Wild Wild West. And it had to happen, and it happened on the first time outside, matching the sun up from Arizona at 11 o'clock, and it rained the next day. We never could get the shot again, and so it was very, very satisfying to have the explosion, the collapse, everything that I designed went correctly the first time. And so that's very, very satisfying, even though it's a very okay movie, No one remembers it really. The dynamics between the 2 characters is kind of like not so hot.
As far as your creative freedom and what kind of instructions you got for model making on Star Wars, how much input did you have versus instruction that you get from people like George?
Well, George is a great. He doesn't really want his fingers on everything all the time. He's a super good delegator, and. I one time was asking him a question about what I should do with instruction, and he listened to me for a little bit, like for 15 seconds, and he said, that sounds like your job to me. I never asked him ever again. So he transmits to the art director, Joe Johnston, what he wants, and so the fencing remote, the one that Luke is fencing with when Ben Kenobi is there, and So Grant came to my desk and he said, Lorne, they want this remote thing made and they need it real quick. And I said, well, what do they want? And he said, well, go up and talk to Joe, the art director, and see what he wants. And I went up and said to Joe what I was going to do. And he said, give me 10 minutes, And so I went away and he goes, I came back and there was a sketch on the paper and handed me the sketch. So it was like, what you would do, a sketch in just a little bit on a piece of scrap paper. I wish I'd saved some of those things because sometimes there were a lot of times that, believe it or not, that Joe, the art director, did the drawings after the fact. Because for all the books that they use and everything. So he would do variations of this or that. But many times, you'd be making the model. He'd do a preliminary drawing, all this stuff, and say, here's the drawing, and you'd go from there. And it was a really good hand and glove relationship between the art department. We got to know each other really, really well from working 10, 11, 12 hours a day for so long, sometimes on weekends. I used to say that there's a variety of us that have actually spent more time with each other than we ever did with our mothers, our wives, or the kids. Because it was like so many hours a day.
Yeah.
Whereas, when you have kids, the more you go to work, back forth. But we literally spent, we worked a minimum of 11 hours a day on the first show. And it was a 10-hour day you didn't get paid for lunch. And eventually we changed that. People started having relationships and having kids, and it just couldn't do 11 hours. And 11 hours was minimum,
yeah.
So you can do that when we're all 20 years old, in our 20s. We were between 19 and I was 30 years old in the first show. So I was one of the oldest and remained one of the oldest.
You're doing great. Finally, did you put any little Easter eggs or hidden things in any of your models that were really just for you or signatures?
The whole crew did things like that. They're in the Millennium Falcon. You can't see around the corner, but there's a miniature Playmate tacked to the wall. One of the fold-out posters of a Playmate. And you'd have to have one of those dental mirrors to see it. With a light. But there were a number of things like that. Probably I kept mine most of the signatures and the little Jawa, as I mentioned before. Or maybe I didn't mention that in the Sandcrawler I made a little Jawa that went back in a little cavity.
Oh, nice.
And anyway, so there were a lot of things like that. There's a lot of playing around. You're model makers, and we're all like working nose to nose, shoulder to shoulder, that kind of thing. So it's like, I remember there's even like, you get out there in the morning, you get your cup of coffee. Dave Murphy is this Irish guy. He always told the best jokes in the morning. So people tell things and what they saw, a movie they saw last night, and then, people tell a joke and he'd tell a joke, and it was the best joke. The Irish jokes were always the best. And so there was just a lot of camaraderie while you were working. We got to know everybody, where they went on vacation, who their girlfriend was in college, that kind of thing. We got to know each other really, really well.
Real family, yeah.
Yeah, over that number of years. Yeah.